Today's tale begins when a seemingly ordinary man steps into an ultra-luxurious restaurant wearing wrinkled clothes. What the overconfident waitress doesn't know is that he's no ordinary guest, he's the hidden owner of this very establishment. Stick around to see how this encounter flips everyone's assumptions upside down, reminding us never to judge a book by its cover. Welcome to Motivation for Success, where we bring you unforgettable moments of kindness, resilience, and inspiration. Be sure to share and like this story as we dive into the incredible events of that evening. Now, buckle up for today's story, a story about the power of kindness, hidden identities, and life-changing realizations. You won't want to miss a second. The Grand Aurora was widely considered the crown jewel of fine dining in Palmway City, situated along an avenue famous for its palm-lined sidewalks and dazzling luxury boutiques. Massive glass panes formed the restaurant's facade, revealing an opulent interior, marble floors gleaming under gentle gold lights, plush velvet chairs, and tables set with the finest silverware. Beyond the double doors, you could always spot well-heeled patrons discussing business deals or celebrating lavish milestones. Those who frequented the Grand Aurora weren't there merely for the cuisine, they came to see and be seen. It was the place where socialites and moguls of Palmway City gathered to flaunt their designer outfits and discuss million-dollar ventures. In their minds, stepping into Grand Aurora was a statement that you had arrived, a declaration of belonging to an exclusive circle. Despite the bustle and constant flow of patrons, the staff at Grand Aurora had a reputation for polished courtesy. Each team member, from the maitre d' to the dishwashers, was keenly aware that every table was a chance to reinforce the restaurant's status as the ultimate dining destination. Or at least, that was the ideal. In reality, human nature has a way of creeping in. Every so often, a staff member would forget the restaurant's core principle, that everyone was to be treated with dignity. And on one particular evening, this principle would be tested in a dramatic way, ultimately teaching everyone a profound lesson about respect and kindness. It was a balmy evening in Palmway City. Exotic cars purred to a stop outside, letting elegantly dressed patrons step out onto the red carpet that led into the Grand Aurora. The hostess, a woman named Serena, was manning the front desk. Her role involved greeting guests and guiding them to their reserved spots, often prime real estate in the center of the dining room, where the chandelier's light danced across every glass and fork. Behind her breezed in Keanu Reeves, sporting simple, slightly wrinkled attire, worn jeans, a plain t-shirt, and a jacket that clearly wasn't designer. He moved with an unhurried grace, as if unaffected by the glitzy environment around him. A faint, friendly smile played on his lips. In the glamorous throng, he might have passed for a relaxed tourist looking for a casual bite to eat. But Serena wasn't alone at the reception desk that night. She was joined by Noelle, a seasoned waitress with years of experience serving celebrities, prominent socialites, and business magnates at the Grand Aurora. While Serena tried to keep to the restaurant's principle of unbiased hospitality, Noelle had developed a habit of making snap judgments. Outwardly, she prided herself on her efficiency and knowledge of fine wines, exotic dishes, and the intricacies of the Grand Aurora's service. Inwardly, however, Noelle held a strong sense of what she considered worthy clientele. She was not fond of unexpected guests she deemed too scruffy for the likes of Grand Aurora. That evening, as she stood next to Serena, Noelle was deep in conversation about a new VIP she had served the night before, some billionaire who left a lavish tip. Mid-sentence, Noelle spotted Keanu stepping in, wearing obviously inexpensive clothes. She froze, focusing her gaze on him like a hawk finding its prey. He offered a polite nod, "Good evening. May I have a table, please?" Noelle's lip curled slightly, though she tried to mask her scorn. "Are you sure you want to dine here?" She spoke in a tone meant to be sweetly sarcastic, loud enough for a couple behind him to overhear. Unperturbed, Keanu gave a small smile. "Yes, I do." Rather than letting Serena respond, her job, after all, Noelle took the lead. "All right then," she said, "but I should warn you, this isn't exactly casual." She didn't wait for a response. Casting him another pointed glance, she spun on her heel and strode into the dining room with the menu under her arm. Keanu followed quietly, noticing the sparkle of enormous chandeliers overhead, the crisp table linens, and the soft background music that evoked an air of elegance. The Grand Aurora's dining room was orchestrated so that the most prominent guests sat nearer the center, often within direct view of an enormous centerpiece arrangement bursting with fresh orchids and lilies. The lighting there was golden and warm, creating perfect photo ops for VIPs who wanted to capture their luxurious dining experiences. Noel, however, guided Keanu to the farthest table near the kitchen door, an area typically reserved for quick coffee breaks for the staff or last-minute walk-ins on an utterly packed night. Even then, the more gracious approach would have been to politely inform him they were fully booked unless he insisted. Instead, she gestured to a seat that faced a wall rather than the main dining area. "Here you are," Noel declared, dropping the menu onto the table with an audible thump. "This should be just fine for you. If you need anything, just wave." Her tone dripped with insincerity. Keanu eyed the table and nodded calmly. "Thank you. I appreciate it." Instead of acknowledging his politeness, Noel rolled her eyes and headed back toward the center of the room. A nearby couple exchanged appalled glances. The man whispered, "That was rude. Why treat him like that?" His companion frowned. "Maybe she's having a bad day, but that's no excuse." Seated in the corner, Keanu silently opened the menu. He began scanning the restaurant's offerings, courses curated by renowned chefs, each item accompanied by a story or a recommended wine pairing. With the same serene expression, he took his time reading, occasionally glancing around to observe the refined decor. From her station, Noel watched him, arms crossed, her eyebrow quirked in an unmistakable expression of disdain. She muttered to a fellow waitress, "He'll probably freak out when he sees the prices. Bet he'll slip out before ordering anything fancy." Her co-worker, busy preparing silverware, gave her a noncommittal shrug. "He seemed polite enough. Maybe he just wants to eat." Noel smirked. "We'll see." After a few minutes, she approached Keanu's table again, this time making no pretense of courtesy. "Have you made up your mind?" she asked, not even trying to hide the boredom in her voice. "Yes, I'd like to try this," Keanu replied softly, pointing to one of the menu's pricier dishes. Noel suppressed a laugh. "The Grand Aurora signature steak, huh?" She tapped the menu with a perfectly manicured fingernail. "You do realize it's $300, right?" Keanu nodded, unruffled. "I do." "Oh, of course," she said with a saccharine smile. "Just wanted to make sure there wouldn't be any surprises later." Still calm, Keanu added, "It sounds wonderful." Noel scribbled the order on her notepad with theatrical flourish. "If you're absolutely certain." She pivoted away, missing the curious stares of other patrons who had partially overheard the conversation. A few eyebrows went up at how openly she was insulting him. Even the bartender, polishing glasses at the bar, gave Noel a troubled glance. Instead of placing the order promptly, Noel decided to punish this unassuming guest for daring to invade the Grand Aurora wearing worn-out jeans. She first wandered over to a table of socialites who were sipping on cocktails in the main section. She chatted with them at length about their recent trip to the French Riviera. Then she took the time to entertain a well-dressed couple, offering them a special wine recommendation. All the while, she made a point of ignoring Keanu's order slip, which lay on the server station untouched. Keanu waited, sipping a glass of water that another waiter, Lorenzo, had compassionately provided after noticing Noel's neglect. Lorenzo was a quiet type, but also warm-hearted. While he wasn't assigned to Keanu's table, he understood that a patron, any patron, deserved at least a drink while they waited. Eventually, an older gentleman in a crisp navy suit, seated at a nearby table, rose from his seat and approached Keanu. His hair was silver, and his face bore the pleasant lines of someone who smiled often. With genuine kindness in his eyes, he said, "Good evening. I hope you don't mind me coming over, but I've noticed it's been a while since someone checked on you." Keanu looked up from the breadbasket in front of him, returning the man's smile. "No trouble at all. And yes, it's been a bit, but I'm alright." The gentleman patted Keanu lightly on the shoulder. "Patience is a virtue, my friend. Don't let them ruin your evening." Before Keanu could respond, Noelle appeared, her voice cutting in with a pointed edge. "Sir," she addressed the older man, "may I help you with anything?" She angled her body between the two, as though she were blocking a potential conspiracy. The older gentleman gave her a genial smile. "I was just making conversation with this fine man here," he said, nodding to Keanu. Noelle forced a grin that didn't reach her eyes. "How kind. But I'm sure he's capable of enjoying his evening without any interruptions." Her hostility was noted by several tables nearby. A hush fell in that section of the dining area, with many guests now blatantly observing. The older man gave Keanu a sympathetic look before stepping away. Noelle exhaled sharply, turned to Keanu, and said, "Your order will be out soon. Just stay put." At last, Keanu's appetizer arrived, delivered by Noelle with a graceless thunk as she placed the plate before him. "Here's your starter," she announced loudly. "Enjoy." "Thank you," Keanu said, as amiable as ever. She couldn't resist leaning in. "You know, it's a rather acquired taste," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "If you're not used to fine dining, it could be a bit much." Keanu lifted his eyes to hers calmly. "I'll keep that in mind." The corners of her mouth twitched with irritation, and she promptly whirled around to depart. Nearby, the couple who had seen everything from the start exchanged looks of disbelief. The woman whispered, "The nerve of her. He's been nothing but polite." Overhearing this, Noelle shot the couple a hard stare before returning to the center of the dining room. The tension in the air grew thicker, punctuated only by the soft notes of the pianist playing background music. At his table, Keanu savored each bite of his appetizer, showing not a flicker of annoyance. He seemed to notice the encouraging smiles from a few nearby patrons, small gestures that showed not everyone shared Noelle's attitude. Eventually, Noelle deigned to pick up Keanu's finished appetizer plate. She performed the task with an air of forced politeness, then vanished again. More time passed, 10 minutes, 15, until his main course arrived. But when it did, it was lukewarm, evidence that it had been sitting under a heat lamp in the kitchen. Placing the dish in front of him, Noelle said, "Your main course. This is our signature steak, though I must remind you, it's $300. Good luck." Calmly, Keanu thanked her again. "I appreciate your help," he said, slicing into the meal with no further comment. His unflappable composure was beginning to unnerve her. She had expected an outburst, or at least a complaint about the delay or the temperature of the food. Instead, he ate quietly, as though he were a paying customer enjoying an evening out. Imagine that. At one point, while he was still working his way through his entree, Noelle passed by again. She spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Some people really push their luck. They come in without a reservation, expecting the royal treatment." She threw a disdainful glance his way before continuing, "It makes you wonder if they even checked their bank accounts first." Several patrons grimaced at this blatant disrespect. A few whispered to each other in shock, some made eye contact with Keanu, silently apologizing for Noelle's behavior. Through it all, Keanu's composure never wavered. He carried on with his meal, occasionally looking around the dining room with quiet interest, as though he were studying a scene in a film. Suddenly, the double doors leading to the back offices swung open, and in strode Mr. Baxter, the Grand Aurora's general manager. He was a well-groomed man in his early 50s with a disciplined posture and a keen eye. Normally, he would take a quick survey of the dining room to ensure all was running smoothly. But tonight, something else compelled him forward. His eyes scanned the space, pausing momentarily on table after table, until they landed on Keanu in the corner. A flicker of recognition crossed his face. His eyebrows rose, and he moved swiftly toward the far corner. Ignoring Noel, who stood in his path with a confused expression, he addressed Keanu with deference. "Mr. Reeves, good evening," he greeted, voice filled with professional warmth. "Welcome to the Grand Aurora. I wasn't aware you'd be joining us today." At that, a stunned hush enveloped the tables around them. A wave of astonishment rippled through the room, as if everyone collectively realized this unassuming man was no random visitor, but the famed actor Keanu Reeves. Noelle, in particular, went white as a sheet. Her eyes darted from Keanu to Mr. Baxter, trying to piece together how and why the manager was treating him like a VIP. With the same gentle composure, Keanu looked at Mr. Baxter. "I decided to stop by unannounced. Hope that's all right." "It's a pleasure to have you here," Mr. Baxter said, bowing slightly. "Please let me know if there's anything at all I can do. I apologize if your experience has been anything less than exceptional." Then he shot a frosty glance at Noelle, who had retreated a step, her arms stiff at her sides. Keanu calmly set down his fork. "No trouble, really. But there is something I'd like to address." Noelle glanced around helplessly, noticing the stares of customers who were by now fully engrossed in the unfolding drama. She opened her mouth, perhaps ready with an excuse, but no words came out. Mr. Baxter cleared his throat and spoke softly. "Yes, of course. I can escort you to a private room if you'd like to discuss." Keanu raised a hand politely. "We can talk here if that's all right," he responded. Then, turning his gaze on Noelle, he said, "I understand there was an issue with how some guests are treated when they walk through those doors." Noelle's face burned with shame. She dared not meet his eyes. Instead, she found herself staring down at her shoes, her hands trembling slightly. Mr. Baxter, on the other hand, faced Keanu with a mixture of mortification and sincerity. "Mr. Reeves, I assure you we train our staff to uphold the highest standard of service. If that was not what you received, I deeply apologize on behalf of everyone here." Patrons nearby were rapt, some leaning forward in their seats. The older gentleman who had earlier approached Keanu now watched the scene with a slight, knowing smile on his lips. The previously whispering couple, arms linked, looked on with anticipation. Keanu took a moment to compose his next words. "Mistakes happen. It's how we respond that matters. Sometimes, we get carried away with judging others by appearance, like I was judged tonight." He glanced around at the tables. "But respect isn't something you earn only if you dress a certain way or have a certain background. Respect should be our default." At that, a quiet applause broke out from one table, quickly joined by a few others. It was a subdued, polite gesture, but heartfelt. Mr. Baxter waited for silence before saying, "I fully agree, Mr. Reeves. And to anyone here tonight who witnessed a lapse in our standards, I sincerely apologize." Finally, Noelle found her voice, though it quivered. I had no idea. That I might be someone you'd recognize." Keanu finished gently. "It shouldn't matter." Tears of mortification welled in Noelle's eyes. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I made assumptions. I never meant for it to come across so cruel." "It did, though," Keanu replied, voice soft. "And I hope this experience can be a turning point, a reminder that every person deserves kindness, no matter what they look like or who they are." Mr. Baxter inhaled sharply, then addressed the entire staff, many of whom had quietly gathered at the edges of the dining room, alerted by the commotion. "Everyone, listen. Let this be a lesson. The Grand Aurora stands for excellence, not just in cuisine, but in hospitality. If we fail at that, it doesn't matter how exquisite our dishes are." Noelle bit her lip, forcing back a fresh wave of tears. "I understand," she said, voice barely above a whisper. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. With a small nod, Keanu offered, tomorrow, perhaps we can have a meeting with the whole team after closing time to ensure we're all on the same page. Mr. Baxter's face lit with relief. Of course, Mr. Reeves. We value your insight. And once again, I offer my deepest apologies. Keanu nodded politely. Thank you. He turned to the rest of the onlooking diners with an apologetic tilt of his head. Everyone, please accept my apologies for interrupting your meals, he said. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. A smattering of applause broke out, this time more robust, and the tension that had weighed on the room lifted. People resumed their own conversations, though excitement buzzed around the revelation that Keanu Reeves co-owned, or at least had a significant stake in, the Grand Aurora. Later that night, once the last patrons had departed, the entire team of the Grand Aurora gathered in the dining room, servers, bartenders, chefs, dishwashers, and even part-time hostesses. They were nervous, shifting from foot to foot or standing rigidly, unsure what was about to happen. Keanu stood at the front alongside Mr. Baxter. Noelle remained near the back, her eyes downcast, cheeks still pink from her earlier humiliation. Clearing his throat gently, Keanu began, "Thank you all for staying late. I know you must be tired. Tonight, I want to talk about what this place means to me, and what I believe it should mean to everyone who walks through those doors." He glanced around, making eye contact with each person. The Grand Aurora is meant to be a haven of hospitality. Not just for celebrities, not just for the wealthy, but for anyone who wants to experience something special. A place where we treat each other with warmth and understanding. We can't see the battles people are fighting inside. Sometimes, the act of offering them a table and a smile can make all the difference. A gentle hush fell over the group. No one dared speak, they were absorbing his words. Looking at Noelle specifically, Keanu continued, "When we judge someone by appearances, we risk missing who they really are. None of us is perfect. But we can strive to be better." Noelle straightened up, clearing her throat. Her eyes shone with contrition. "I appreciate this chance to learn, Mr. Reeves. I let my assumptions about your clothes and demeanor cloud my judgment. It was unfair and unkind. I won't let that happen again." Several staff members, including Serena, nodded in solidarity. The tension that had gripped the group gradually dissolved. Keanu's voice softened even more. "I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here to share a lesson. The strongest places, the strongest teams, are the ones that learn from their errors. Let's go forward by committing to genuine kindness. That's how we'll make the Grand Aurora stand out, not just for its food, but for its heart." Applause, gentle but sincere, echoed through the empty dining room. In that moment, the Grand Aurora's staff felt less like a hierarchical machine and more like a collective of individuals ready to support one another. Noelle wiped at her tears, exchanging nods with co-workers who offered her discreet smiles of encouragement. Eventually, Keanu took his leave. He paused at the entrance, glancing back at the softly lit dining room. Just a short while ago, he had been seated in a dimly lit corner, enduring Noelle's aloofness. Yet what could have ended in anger and frustration was now a shared lesson, a chance to build something stronger. Outside, the lights of Palmway City sparkled like a sea of stars, reflecting off the polished metal of parked luxury cars. He took a slow breath, allowing the events of the evening to settle. The hush of the night felt like a soothing balm after the drama. With one final look at the Grand Aurora's elegant facade, he turned and began walking. In his mind, he reflected on the idea that had shaped his entire approach to life: it costs nothing to be kind, but the ripple effects of kindness can transform hearts, workplaces, and communities. And so we end tonight's story with a question for you: when was the last time you extended kindness to someone you initially misunderstood? Think about your day-to-day interactions. Do you judge people by their clothes, their cars, or their status before giving them a fair chance? What might happen if, instead, you treated everyone with warmth and respect right from the start? Sometimes, people who appear the most out of place in your world could be carrying the heaviest burdens, or they could be remarkable in ways you cannot imagine. The next time you sense yourself jumping to conclusions, pause. Remember this story. Remember Keanu Reeves sitting at the Grand Aurora, facing disrespect yet responding with unwavering calm. If this story moved you, consider spreading kindness today. Say a friendly word to a stranger, help someone in need, or even just refrain from letting assumptions shape your interactions. Those small acts create powerful ripples that might change someone's life, or yours, forever. Thank you for joining us here on Motivation for Success. We hope this story resonates with you and reminds you of the power of empathy and respect. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the subscribe button so you won't miss our next video. Share your own stories of kindness or times you've had your assumptions challenged in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Remember, no matter where you come from, how you look, or what your background is, you are worthy of kindness. And if we all chose to show a bit more understanding, imagine the world we could create. Subscribe, stay inspired, and we'll see you in the next video for another uplifting story. Until then, keep spreading goodness, one small gesture at a time.